Holler to my ladies in Japan, this video is for you. Today we'll take a deep dive into sanitary napkins in Japan. First, let's talk about the many types and descriptions. So the first few months I was living in Japan, back when my Nihongo was practically non-existent, I noticed that there are so many labels on the packages of sanitary napkins, and I was stupid enough to think that simply looking at the picture would be good enough for me to get away with choosing which sanitary pads would be good. I mean, if it looks thick enough in the picture and also it has no wings, then that's my preference and we should be good to go. And then I'd go around babbling about how sanitary pads in Japan are just different. Needless to say, I was wrong, and once I took the time to actually check the fine print, I realized that the only real problem about sanitary pads in Japan is that there are too many options and too many details. Let's begin. One description that you would most certainly find on the packages of your sanitary pads refers to the description of the user's flow. This description usually ends with a symbol yo, and that means use. So for example, you might see something like futsu yo, and that means you should use it on your regular flow because futsu means regular or common. Or you might see oihiyo, and that means you should use it on days where you have heavy flow. On the other hand, if you see karuihiyo, then you should use it on days when you have a light flow. There are also maxi pads that are meant for days when you have a especially heavy flow. And in this case, you might see at the very first part of the word the symbols cho, which means very, or tokuni, which means especially. So tokuni oihi yo or tokuni oihiru yo, and that means for days when you have a especially heavy flow. The pads in Japan can also be classified according to the time of use. So this usually falls between day use and night use. For day use, you would most certainly see the symbol hiruyo, and for night use, you would see yoruyo. For maxi pads that are meant for night use, especially if you have really heavy flow at night, you might also see the words gusuri or jukusui. And these do not really classify your flow, but these are actually words describing the type of sleep that you would have. And basically they mean that you would be sound asleep or you would have a sound sleep. So these are meant to be night pads, and when you use them, then you should be able to sleep soundly without worrying about any leakage. Oh, and you might also see chojikan, and this means long time or long lasting. So you could also probably use them as night pads. I haven't actually used them, but yeah, they're meant to last for a long time when you have regular flow. Of course, there's also the question of wings or no wings. Wings in Japanese is hane. So if you see hanetsuki, that means it has wings, and hane nashi means no wings. And of course, you could also see this illustrated on the package always, I think, or most of the time, if not always. Next up, thickness. This is also one label that a lot of sanitary pads have on the package. And basically, most of these words just say that the pad is slim or trim because that's a selling point, of course, because you don't want it bulging or something. So girls, especially during work days or days when they have to go out, then we tend to prefer thinner pads. So these words describe how thin they are or that they're thin. And let me just look at my copy here. So you might see words like sukiri, which means trim, and surimu, which is of course the Japanese word for slim in English. Other words you might see are usui, and that means thin. And then, of course, you could also see the word cho here, which, as I've mentioned before, means very. So, for example, you could see cho surimu, and it means very thin. And also, like kyoku, also means something like super or very. So, kyoku usu means very thin. Another description you might find of the package is about the texture. Usually words that refer to how smooth or soft they are. Some common words you might see are sarafua, which means smooth, and then you have fua or fuafua, which means fluffy, and fluffy in a thick kind of way, and then yawaraka, which means soft. Next, napkin or liner. This is easy enough because Japanese actually use the English words, but just with the Japanese spelling and pronunciation. So napkin would be napkin, and liner would be raina. Another label you would most definitely find has to do with the length of the pad, and this is really easy because it's usually just indicated in centimeters, and usually the length of the pad according to the type it has is for light day pads and for liners you usually have 20 to 23 centimeters, and for pads for heavy flow you have 24 to 32 centimeters, and for overnight pads or maxi pads it could go as far as 42 centimeters. Not so common in my experience, but yet another description you might find has to do with the scent of the pad. So if it is scented, then you would see something like something something no kaori. So that means the smell of something. For example, let's say lavender. So lavender no kaori, something like that. And if it's not scented, then you could see mu koryo. And of course, there are also pads that claim to have like deodorizing agents. And in that case, you would see shoshu. And that's about it when it comes to the types, really. But there are other words that are very commonly found on the package as well, and that could help you decide about the pad that you should get. So one word is anshin, and this means peace of mind. So basically, it's telling you that if you wear this pad, then you're gonna have peace of mind. And then another one is this is present for all of them is ko iri, and this means the number of sheets or the number of pads that is contained in one product. And then you have kyushu, you would almost always see this. This word means absorption, and so when it's on the label, this is usually preceded by an adjective which differs according to the company or the brand of the product that you're using. But basically, if you see this on the package, then it means like it has good absorption. So it's one of the selling points of this pad. So yeah, if that's something that you're concerned with, then you should look out for this Japanese word kyushu. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to practice reading labels of some random sanitary napkins that I found when I went for a visit at our local drugstore. And this is, I think, a maxi pad. So let's start by reading the labels from the top right. So the first one is Toku oihi no yoru yo. So yeah, if you have remembered what we've discussed earlier, tokuni means like especially or very, and oi means many. So oihi means heavy flow, and also it says yoru yo, so it's for night. So yeah, this is definitely a maxi pad for nights when you have a heavy flow. And then after that it says, and it also has an illustration, and it says hanetsuki, so that means that it's winged, and it's 33 centimeters long, so definitely quite long. And then below that you have juroku or 16 ko iri, and that means there are 16 sheets or 16 pads in this particular product or this particular set. And then on the top left, a lot of the words we did not really like discuss. So yeah, if you've only listened to the words that we had earlier, or if you only know the words that we had earlier, then this would be part of the label that you would not be able to understand. But then here's the thing, right on the middle you have anshin, and that means peace of mind, as we have talked about earlier. And before the word anshin, you have cho anshin. So this means that you would definitely have peace of mind. So that label on the top left actually talks about the same idea. So it says that you should not worry about leakage. So more fuan, netteru aida zutto morefuan. So that means the entire time you're sleeping, then you would not worry about leakage. So it's actually the same idea. And so even if you would not be able to read the labels on the left, just looking at the cho anshin at the middle, you would understand the idea. So yeah, the company advertising or making this product is really very confident about its ability to stop leakage even if you use it on nights when you have very heavy flow. Before we end, I would like to give some additional tips about buying your sanitary pads in Japan. Tip number one. When I first saw it, I was shocked because it was not a common practice back in my home country. But in Japan, a lot of drugstores actually display samples, like actual sanitary napkins, as samples right there on the sanitary napkin aisles. So all you have to do really is just check out which of those are close to your preference and then choose the product represented by that sample. Or if there's a product that you have not really used before but are curious about, then just check out the sample to see if that's something that would work for you. Tip number two. Although they exist, sanitary napkin vending machines are not really very common in Japan, so I would advise you to always keep one in your bag handy just in case. And tip number three, if you do find yourself in a situation where you need a sanitary napkin and you don't have one, then the nearest and quickest place you could go to get one is your convenience store. Just note that the choices there are not as many as the ones that you would find in drugstores or in supermarkets. Tip number four, buying in bulk from Amazon would save you some money, not a lot, but it's also a good way to make sure that you always have many pads in stock at home. Tip number five, cloth napkins are actually more common in Japan than you would expect. And I have not tried them personally, although I'm thinking about using some in the future. So as of this moment, I could not speak about their quality or recommend any brands. But if they are your preference or you're curious about them, you can just very easily search for nuno napkin, and that means cloth napkin, in online sites like Amazon, and there would be a lot of options presented there. And so that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it helped you somehow. And if you like this video, do give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Bye.